Headline: DeFi sector in $14 billion meltdown as $290 million rsETH hack fallout burns. Aave. Published at 5:07 p.m., April 20th, 2026. The DeFi sector is reeling from the effects of a suspected North Korea-linked hack, which has spread to multiple protocols and saw DeFi poster child Aave's TVL drop by a third. Saturday's incident saw $290 million worth of Kelp DAO's liquid staking token, rsETH, stolen via the Layer 0 bridge. The loot was deposited into Aave and used to borrow $236 million of WETH. But with liquidity drained and markets frozen, users began to panic, withdrawing collateral where they could and borrowing whatever they could get their hands on. In all, since Saturday, almost $9 billion has left Aave, with the protocol potentially facing hundreds of millions of dollars of bad debt. The question of who will foot the bill is still very much to be decided. The hack. The hack, which Layer 0 suspects was carried out by the Lazarus group of North Korean state-sponsored hackers, exploited rsETH issuer Kelp DAO's single DVN setup for bridging their token. Layer 0 bridges tokens between blockchains and uses decentralized verifier networks, DVNs, to validate transactions. The model puts the onus on asset issuers to define their own security posture, including DVN thresholds. In Kelp DAO's case, they used a one-of-one setup relying on Layer 0's DVN. Aside from an initial acknowledgement posted to X, there's been no further communication from Kelp DAO itself. Read more. Inside the $280 million drift hack, weeks of setup, minutes to drain. Layer 0 claims its DVN was compromised through a highly sophisticated RPC spoofing attack. RPCs are nodes which allow external apps to read blockchain data. The attack presented malicious info only to the targeted DVN, skirting monitoring efforts. In addition, it performed a DDoS attack on uncompromised RPCs to trigger fallback to the poisoned ones. However, pseudonymous veteran DeFi developer Banteg pushed back on Layer 0's characterization as an RPC poisoning attack, which suggests purely outside interference. With attackers pulling off an infra breach within the perimeter, the real story is a targeted implant operating inside the trust boundary. They disapprove of such elaborate distancing. Warning: given it doesn't say how the breach has occurred, I wouldn't rush re-enabling the bridges. Read more. Hyperbridge exploited less than 2 weeks after April Fool's Day hack prank. The fallout. Aside from the hack itself, the real damage has spread across DeFi, especially on the sector's flagship lending protocol, Aave. Rather than selling such a large quantity of rsETH, crashing its price, the attacker chose to borrow against it. Depositing stolen rsETH as collateral into Aave and other lending platforms, they then borrowed $236 million worth of WETH, according to blockchain audit firm PeckShield's tally. Read more. KuCoin criticized for helping launder $9.5 million from fake ledger app. Aave's rsETH markets were paused shortly after users were warned to withdraw now, ask questions later. In the hours that followed, over $6 billion left the protocol. The lack of WETH liquidity has also left several stablecoin markets at full utilization. Spark's Monate Supply explained that unwinding positions and liquidation of unhealthy positions was stalled, with recent changes to Aave's borrowing rates significantly increasing the risk of cascading market failure. The liquidity crunch spread to other platforms, vaults, and even unrelated ecosystems such as Solana. Read more. Tether challenges USDC Solana hegemony with $127.5 million. Drift bailout. Taking stock. With rsETH estimated to be facing an 18% shortfall in backing, Aave may be facing over $250 million of bad debt. DeFi Llama developer 0xNGMI put the worst case at $341 million and best case at $76 million. The platform's backstop fund, Umbrella, contains $55 million of ETH, and former contributor ACI has pledged funds from its staking program. Additionally, Umbrella's predecessor contains over $280 million. However, it's uncertain whether this or any DAO treasury funds would be made available to fill the hole. ACI's Mark Zeller estimates a 5 to 8% haircut for Aave WETH depositors once the dust settles. To put the damage caused into perspective, in all, the exploiter's main address currently holds a total of $245 million worth of ETH, $174 million on Ethereum, and $71 million on Arbitrum. Meanwhile, the value of the wider DeFi market has dropped by $14 billion since Saturday. Read more. Crypto hack goes political as Grinex blames Western Special Services. The path ahead. How the rest of this episode unfolds will depend in large part on how Kelp DAO decides to distribute losses. CoinDesk reports that Kelp DAO plans to blame Layer Zero's documentation, default configurations, and team guidance when setting up the bridge. Aave has hinted at non-bridged rsETH tokens being fully backed, though this may just be its own PR.